It was a half day in court today, and it is already over. But today we had two of the most likable witnesses that we have seen during this whole time. Today is Wednesday, June 4th, and we just wrapped up day 27 in Karen Read's second trial. Now, first up on the stand today is literally my all-time favorite witness in any trial ever, the snowplow driver, Brian Lucky Laughlin. Now, Lucky is my favorite for a couple of reasons. He has a snowplow truck named Franken Truck because it has a bunch of like aftermarket and spare parts on it to enhance like lighting and visibility and things like that. And I just love that Franken Truck. But more than anything, this is why I love Lucky. When he's driving, he watches carefully, and listen to why.
Now, when you are plowing, sir, where is your attention focused?
My attention is focused out the front window, to the right and to the left.
Why?
I am looking for pedestrians. I'm looking for residents that may be backing out, not aware that I'm there, and God forbid, animals.
How can you not love that? Now, here's the thing about Lucky. He was plowing Fairview Road that night, and that's something that you think would be important, right? But nobody from Canton Police Department or Massachusetts State Police talked to him. In fact, Proctor even put in a report that nobody would have been plowing Fairview Road at that time, which wasn't true. So police didn't talk to Lucky, but the defense investigator did 2 weeks after John's death. And Lucky tells the investigator two very important things. Here's the first.
Now, as you were passing 34 Fairview, could you see the area of the flagpole at 2:45 in the morning, sir?
Yes.
What was on the ground on the Alberts lawn at that point in the area of the flagpole?
Nothing.
Did you see a 6'1", 216-pound man lying on that lawn?
No.
So he drove by with these huge spotlights and said there was no body in the yard. But when he came back an hour later, listen to what he saw then.
Describe for the jury what you see in the road at that point.
As I make my right onto Fairview, I notice that there's a vehicle on the right-hand side, roughly in the area of the flagpole in front of 34 Fairview.
Okay. And did you make note of what type of vehicle that was?
Yes.
What type of vehicle was that?
A Ford Edge.
Now, the Alberts have a few Ford Edges in their family, but of course, there are also Ford Edges all over town. And the problem is the police never investigated that. Hank got up for cross and tried to discredit this testimony in two ways. One, he tried to make it about Lucky being intimidated or threatened to testify this way. And two, by picking out time frames that Lucky has said differently in different interviews or testimony. But as far as the timelines go, no matter what, if it was 2:30 or 3 or 3:30 or whatever, Lucky was clear that he came down Fairview Road and John O'Keefe was not there. Then he came back a while later and there was a Ford Edge parked right there. But then Hank's criticism of the timeline came back to bite him because he made such a big deal insinuating that Lucky testified a certain way because of the blogger. And he said the interview that Lucky did with the investigator was the same day that an article from Turtle Boy came out where he talked about Lucky. And he's basically kind of saying like, oh, you only said this because Turtle Boy was going to post all this stuff about you. So there was a sidebar and a break. And when they came back, it turns out Hank was off by a whole year. The investigator interview was on June 5th of 2024, and the article from Turtle Boy was June 5th of 2023. So Hank just spent all that time criticizing Lucky for having a timeline that varied by like 45 minutes to an hour. And Hank had papers right in front of him and still had his timeline off by a whole year. Hank. There was one part of testimony, though, that really hit me hard on this one. Yannetti got up on redirect and he actually asked Lucky about why some of his times were a little bit different than they were before. And his response, followed by Hank's reaction, literally brought tears to my eyes as we were watching it. Take a look.
Now, finally, with regard to the 5:30 testimony that you gave last year.
Yes.
Did you also testify that the last pass that you tried to make when the police were blocking the scene was about 3 hours after that 3:30 second up and down?
Yes.
So why is it last year that you testified that it was 3 hours later, but you came up with the time of 5:30 as the final time?
As he's asking me these questions, I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm sorry, math is not my strong suit.
You mentioned you're trying to do the math in your head. There is no reason why you would specifically remember certain times on each pass other than trying to remember and give an accounting, right?
Could you rephrase that, please?
Sure. You don't have your watch out on a certain schedule that you have to pass a certain street at a certain time.
Correct.
You weren't marking your times to some event when you were driving up and down the street that night, were you?
No.
So you're trying to go back with your memory and piece it together the best you can.
Correct.
And that's why you're giving estimates, yes?
Correct.
And when you spoke to those law enforcement officials, not Canton, not state police, and you said at 3 o'clock you saw first responder vehicles, that was based on your memory, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was based on your memory.
Not at 3:30.
Right. Do you know that there was a car similar to a Ford Edge in front of 34 Fairview around 6 a.m. that morning?
I wasn't able to get in front of Fairview Drive, 34 Fairview, at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That was tough. Now, Hank spent all this time basically insinuating that Lucky only testified this way because of pressure from Turtle Boy, and even accused him of enjoying the attention that he got from testifying last year, since there were so many people who supported him for telling the truth about what he saw. It was like he was trying to make Lucky look like he was wanting all this attention and praise when Lucky never asked for any of this. Now, he really focused on the pressure and threats from Turtle Boy and Karen Reed supporters to make Lucky testify this way. But Hank's efforts to paint Lucky that way were all destroyed with one question on redirect from Yannetti.
The questioning about the attention that you received in 2023 when you received secondhand the information from the blogger, was that before or long after you were interviewed and gave a statement to the defense investigator in February of 2022?
It was long after.
Next up on the stand was Karina Kolakus, and we also loved her. She is just a normal mom. She really is just a normal mom. She knows John O'Keefe and Karen Reed through her daughters who played basketball with John O'Keefe's niece. She also knows Jen McCabe through her daughter and basketball as well. Now, she reluctantly went to Waterfall that night on January 28th. Her husband was there after their daughter's basketball game, and he wanted Karina to join. Now, one thing that's important to note, Karina drank only water that night. She had no alcohol, nothing to drink other than water. And she talked to Karen Reed pretty much the entire time she was there. She said out of like the hour that they were there together, maybe it was like 50 minutes that she spent talking just to Karen. She described a sweet, affectionate moment between John and Karen where he like walked over and kissed her on the forehead. It was really, really sweet. And they actually showed that video. At the end of the night, she walked out with Karen Reed and she heard Jen McCabe say, "You're coming with me," talking to Karen. Now, as a reminder, Karen didn't go with Jen McCabe. She actually got in her own car. Yannetti asked Karina if she was concerned at all about Karen driving since, she had been drinking. And she said, no, she hadn't thought of it. This is important because Karina was not drinking at all and would have a clearer memory of the night than someone who was drinking. She came across as a caring and honest person on the stand, and I would believe that she'd tell the jurors if she had been worried about Karen getting behind the wheel of a car. Plus, since she had only been drinking water, I feel like she's not going to be just another one that's drinking and being like, yeah, it's fine. She was only drinking water that night. Now, on cross, Brennan asked barely any questions, which was also interesting. When does he ever do that? Why do you think his cross comments were so short? Let me know in comments. Now, Bev met with the attorneys once Karina was off the stand and informed the jurors that they are ahead of schedule. So she gave everyone the day off tomorrow. But don't worry, we will be back live at 9 a.m. on Friday for a full day. And I will be streaming from a fun new location. So be sure to tune in. Now, a new episode of 13 Juror Podcast just dropped, so check that out if you need something to do during our day off. And I will see you bright and early Friday morning for jury duty, right here on Crime Junkie Jury.